Got some cheater notes here since I'm getting old. I don't have Alzheimer's, I have sometimes disease, sometimes I remember, sometimes I don't. Most of us that have been in the hobby for a while all have specialties. Art Pierce is a great one for Lux Radio Theater, and other people are real avid collectors on Red Ryder. I happen to be the WXYZ Big Three, as they're referred to. The Green Hornet, Challenge of the Yukon, Sergeant Preston, some people know it by, and the Lone Ranger. And I have probably what's the largest single private collection of all three of these shows. Including, what most people don't know, is I have the entire run of Green Hornet from beginning in 1936 to the very end of the run in 52. All transcriptions, all scripts. They were turned over to my archive about 8 years ago by George W. Trendle Jr., who's the son of George Trendle, who owned and managed and ran WXYZ in Detroit, where they produced the shows. And over the last few years, we've transferred over 1,000 Green Hornet broadcasts direct from disc into the digital studio I have for restoration purposes, and we've been slowly working on the series. In collectors' hands, generally in the last 30-35 years, there's somewhere between around 100 to 130 or 40 shows available. Most large collections you can get today are in the MP3 format, not a format I personally endorse, but I'm an archive, a restoration archive, so the quality isn't in the MP3 world. So I don't go there. Others get it from various sources, including my archive, and convert it to MP3. So the shows that are out there now, you can get them in those sources. A lot of shows for a little investment. And as more shows are released out of my archive or other places in the future, I'm sure they'll be converted, and or the real purists can collect them in WAV files. The series started January 31st, 1936, and in my log, which I produced a number of years ago, early on, with information known at the time, I was under the impression that the first probably 300 shows or so were not recorded, and that's not the case. They were recorded from show 1. However, the recording broadcast numbering system that WXYZ used was started in 1939 at broadcast 342. The dual number system was an outgrowth of the Lone Ranger shows. They started the Lone Ranger broadcast, contrary to earlier versions of the history, was not on January 30th, 1933. It was on January 31st, 1933. And they started recording or keeping track of the shows per broadcast with show 1, show 2, show 3. And by the 5th year, they decided to try recording the show for syndication purposes, mostly in the southeast, for Morita Bread. And those shows were heard a day or two later after they were shipped down out of Chicago, where the discs were recorded for playback then. Well, that then created a problem. How do you keep track of inventory, shows that were recorded, shows that were not recorded? So they instituted a dual numbering system, and with the Lone Ranger, the first recording was done on broadcast 776. So the recordings, when you look at the information number, is 776/1, 777/2 for the second broadcast recorded. So a lot of collectors only went by the recording number. So when you have recording number 127, they figure, well, 3 days a week. November 1933, we got an early show. Well, it was November 1938, so they're missing by 5 years. So they carried the same kind of numbering system over to the Green Hornet. So the first 342 shows were not, or 41 shows were not recorded with a recording sequence. So early investigation and research on my part assumed that the broadcasts were recorded starting in 39, and that wasn't the case. They started from the beginning, because we have all the discs. They were stored for almost 50 years in a very large warehouse in Detroit, up on about the 4th floor of this gigantic building. And Mr. Trendle Jr. came in. He lives outside the country. He came in, he met me at the storage facility, and we went up and looked at the crates, and they were stored, I don't remember how many shows per crate, But these were large, about 700-pound wooden crates, steel banded shut, with all the recordings in them. There was a series of these crates. And in another area, there were all of the scripts that were kept in large archival boxes, similar to what you'd see in libraries or other large archives. And all the scripts are usually bundled together in groups of about 36. So we have all of those with 50 years of dust and debris on them. Fortunately, they're wrapped in brown paper, something like you'd get at a meat market 30, 40 years ago. But still, with the ravages of time and stuff like that, some of that debris gets in there. So they get kind of messy to work with. Plus, a lot of them were done on mimeograph machines, so the ditto ink is all over the place and or bleeding into the paper. So in a lot of cases, you can't photostat those scripts because they come out as just one large dark block. So we've been slowly, meticulously hand keyboarding in a lot of the stuff and doing some minor scans when we can to keep the original format and position on the pages and things. The shows, for the most part, there's a few of them that are never going to be better than challenging to listen to. Time has not been kind to ETs over the years, and of course, depending on the material that the ETs are made out of, some of it falls apart a lot quicker than others. Fortunately for us in this particular case, it was in a warehouse where the climate control was pretty good. I received I was telling a few people here, the entire Phil Harris Alice Faye collection from Alice about a year before she died. And unfortunately, those discs were kept in damp, cold closets, mildewy storage facilities. They were kept all over the place for a number of years. And when you transfer some of that, literally the acetate discs, the lacquers and stuff, sometimes will curl right off as you're playing them. And there's no second pass. You either get it the first time or you don't get it. Fortunately, we've saved all those shows. But if there's a mistake, if there's a problem, if there's a skip on discs that go that bad, there's no way of going back and getting it because the lacquer's gone. But with the Hornets, there was very little problem with that. As a side note with the Hornets, there were also a number of other shows that were stored in there. Ann Worth Housewife was a soap opera that WXYZ did. I don't think very many people have ever heard any of those. They did Ned Jordan, Manhunter, they did a few other shows. But the real find in there, and in this particular case we have a problem with it, so I've not transferred these discs yet. There was another series that a lot of the actors on Green Hornet appeared on called Bob Barclay, American Agent. And that was a Cold War series that was started at the end of World War II. And the State Department got into their knickers a little bit behind the scenes because a lot of the fictional accounts that were used in the dramas very closely paralleled some of the early Cold War espionage stuff. And the State Department wasn't real happy about that, thinking, oh, we may be giving away the store here if the creative writers are coming up with these scenarios that may be similar to what we're doing, and the other side, they're certainly listening, maybe picking up a few ideas of what to do or not to do, which will hamper us. So after about 49 broadcasts, it left the air. Well, we have all of the original rehearsal discs and all the broadcasts for 57 shows, although there was 8 of them that never aired. So we have all of those in there too, along with a few other side recordings of Green Hornet that were recorded, never aired. We have scripts that were written, produced, accepted, never recorded or broadcast. So we've got a number of interesting items on the series. It ran...
Tonight from the home of Ken Murray's Blackouts, the El Capitan Theater, Hollywood, Lever Brothers Company presents The Pepsodent Show, starring Bob Hope and his special guest, Al Jolson.
C-O